Good morning, Barry Bryson here. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word. We're going to dive into the text of Amos this morning as we continue our study, finish our study of the writing prophets who address directly the northern kingdom. And we're going to be doing Amos last. Um, and so let's read verses 1 and 2. The words of Amos, who was among the sheep herders from Tekoa, which he envisioned in visions concerning Israel in the days of Uzziah, king of Judah, and in the days of Jeroboam, son of Joash, king of Israel, 2 years before the earthquake. And he said, The Lord Yahweh roars from Zion. From Jerusalem he utters his voice, and the shepherds' pasture grounds mourn, and the summit of Carmel dries up. And then in verse 3, he begins his prophecies against the nations. Last time, if you were with us last time, we introduced that he's going to begin by pronouncing judgment against all the nations that surround the northern kingdom of Israel. This really gets their attention, I'm sure, and they're all amening the beginning of his prophecy. Um, he gives us so much good information in the first verse. Tekoa, as we said, is way south. It's south of Bethlehem, 6 miles south of Bethlehem. And so he's come a long way. He's not a wealthy man. He's a sheep herder. Somebody hires him to look after sheep. And later on in chapter 7, he's going to also call himself a farmer of figs, of sycamore figs. So this is a guy who is he's a farmhand, and he's got a side gig. He's a shepherd, employed as a shepherd, and then he's got a side gig, with his grove of figs. He gives us the date. In fact, he gives us the date quite specifically because it says 2 years before the earthquake. In about 760 BC, there was a massive earthquake in Palestine, and there is geological evidence, datable evidence for this earthquake that took place in about 760 or so BC. This is right in the middle of Jeroboam II's reign, right in the middle of Uzziah's reign. So he's prophesying roughly 40 years before Assyrian captivity. If he's prophesying in 1760, 1762, and they're taken into captivity in 722, that's when he is prophesying. Um, 2 verses may not seem like enough for us to talk about, but they are plenty for us to talk about. Um, he has visions, and the word here is ra'ah ro'eh. He's seeing. He's a seer. He's acting as a seer. Um, when Samuel was a prophet and Samuel is anointing Saul king, the writer of First Samuel has to explain that he's using the word ro'eh, seer, instead of the word prophet, because that was the ancient term for his readers, the old style term for a prophet. And Amos is reaching back to describe what he's seeing visions, um, and he's delivering those visions. And he begins by saying, Yahweh roars. So God is a lion and he's roaring. He's announcing. He's the apex, organism. He is the all powerful, and he is roaring from Zion. Zion itself is significant. Um, Zion is a hill upon which Jerusalem sits. And so he is centering God's presence in Jerusalem. And in case we didn't get that, and from Jerusalem he utters his voice. Jerusalem, the Jebusite city, until the reign of David. David captured it, made it his capital. Solomon built the temple there. The temple is still there. God is supposed to be worshipped in his temple. His temple is in Jerusalem. The northern kingdom, they do not worship Yahweh in Jerusalem. In fact, Jeroboam I established a new religion for them so that they wouldn't go back to Jerusalem to worship. And so there is a laying down of the gauntlet at the very opening, from the very opening lines. God is worshipped in his temple in Jerusalem. And then the fact that this is going to be an oracle of judgment. The shepherd's pasture grounds mourn. He's a shepherd. There's not going to be good pasturage. Why? Because the summit of Carmel dries up. Mount Carmel, which at the time could have for much of the year been snow-capped, Mount Carmel is close to the Mediterranean Sea because of the microclimate there and the way the clouds catch. It creates a lot of rainfall for the Central Plain, and up to 28 inches of year. What is speculated they were averaging at that time because in that area because of Mount Carmel. That's going to go away. Um, and to talk about rainfall, we've already talked about in Hosea how the Lord is not being worshipped in the northern kingdom. They are worshiping their bull cult, and they're also worshiping Baal. And Baal is the god of the storm. And Elijah has already established that the person who controls the rain is Yahweh himself. And Amos is referencing that too. He roars and there's no rain. He's the one in charge. Okay. We're going to talk about the prophecy against Damascus, verses 3 through 5, next time. Thank you for joining me for another 5 good minutes with the Word.